Welcome to Buckets, coming to you from the Tommy John Home Studios. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and this is the Future Jays. We're going to talk about the trade. Literally, DraftKings has a section up called The Trade, which you can find props on Mavericks and Lakers. We will talk more about the fallout from the Dallas Mavericks trading Luka Doncic. Every time I say it out loud, it gets weirder and weirder and more unbelievable. We are also going to talk about breaking news just before we came on the air to record this on Sunday night. De'Aaron Fox is headed to the Sacramento Kings for 3 first-round picks, and Zach LaVine. Not a bad haul for the Sacramento Kings, who got both draft equity and Zach LaVine. The Chicago Bulls, we'll talk about them as well. We're going to talk about awards. Joe Dellera has decided to finally turn on the evil empire of Peyton Pritchard backers and join Jim and I in #TheResistance. And we'll talk about where that bet is going to lead us. We'll have thoughts on Rookie of the Year. We're going to talk about the impacts of all of these in the betting markets. Oh, we'll also do best bets because, you know, the games keep on rolling. We'll do best bets for the Monday slate as well. I'm joined, as I am every Sunday night, for our Monday episode, by Jim Turvey on Twitter and the Action Network app at TurveyBets. You can find him at Roto Grinders, knocking out dynamite prop stuff every single day. His hit rate in the Action Network app this season is disgusting, and I would expect to hear Jim back on our WNBA Buckets podcast in the very near future, so be on the lookout for that. I'm also joined by Joe Dellera. You can find him on Twitter and in the Action Network app at Joe Dellera, and you can find him on the Cash That podcast, which if you're catching us at youtube.com/the Action Network, you can see a little poster over his right shoulder advertising that show. So check that out. We have a whole family of like content here. So like Fiddle's got a show, the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast, and he does Twitter live shows, and you got Jay Money's live show every day during the week, and you got there's so many good, and Brian Fonseca's YouTube page, which is absolutely blown up. Go check out Brian's stuff on YouTube too. He does a great job breaking down all the stuff. My brain's a little melted because I spent until 3:30 breaking down content, writing, and podcasting and doing things, and then got back up and did it all again. And so my brain's a little fried. But I do want to get into, let's talk about first the De'Aaron Fox deal. So the trade parameters, the Sacramento Kings are trading De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs, his preferred destination. Good for the Spurs for finally being a marquee destination for a trade target for a superstar after all those years. All they had to do was get the best prospect in the last 25 years. They get the Spurs get De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The Sacramento Kings get Zach LaVine, 3 first-round picks, a 2025 from Charlotte, a 2027 San Antonio, and a 2031 Minnesota. 3 second-round picks, a 2025 Chicago, a 2028 Denver pick, and their 2028 own pick back. That's a big one. The Bulls get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 pick, which they owed to San Antonio. So they get their own pick back, which I think is that's well, you know, honestly, it's like, hey, you're just trying to reset the board after what you did. All right, let's go to Joe first. So I'll just give 30 seconds because this one we've known about for a while. I've kind of made references on Buckets. I've talked about this, as well as on Locked On NBA Daily. I've talked about this, about how, like, yeah, there's probably a potential for the Kings to get a replacement star here, and Zach LaVine made the most sense. The Bulls, this is basically like they want to shed money, and this gives them a way to send LaVine out and get a pick that they really needed back. Like, even if you get another pick, just having your own control is a big deal here. For the Kings, you get the 3 firsts, and you get Zach LaVine. So, you know, this is, 3 times the package that the Dallas Mavericks got for Luka Doncic? But the picks are really valuable, so you have future equity. You can also trade to make upgrades if you want to. I personally don't love the personnel side of this, because for me, Zach LaVine was on pace to be an all-NBA guard. DeMar DeRozan shows up, and he goes in the shitter. And he spends 3 years being garbage, and everyone's saying he's the most overpaid player and being untradeable. And DeMar leaves, and what do you know? Zach LaVine's back to being what looks like an all-NBA level guard. He looks phenomenal. And now he's back with DeMar DeRozan. And look, I've said this repeatedly. I don't think this is DeMar's fault. I'm not like DeMar DeRozan is sabotaging Zach LaVine. I just think that the way that DeMar plays tends to have a negative impact on certain guys who are able to, space the floor in any meaningful capacity. And he just limits what they're able to do. And so I don't like this for Sacramento. They are not a serious, to me, like they might make the playoffs because this, like, well, at least they won't be so miserable, which is what they've been since the Fox trade. Like they can like be like, hey, we're still in this. We got Zach LaVine. Like, yeah, we got Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis. Look out, playoff teams. And so like they might make it, but they're not going anywhere. The Spurs fit is seamless. He's a great defender. He's worked so hard on expanding his range. He's clutch as hell. He's still one of the fastest players in the NBA. He's a way better defender than what he's shown in Sacramento. He pairs perfectly in terms of the speed that you're gonna be able to run DHOs with Wembanyama. Good luck about figuring out how to manage that. Fox has never really played with a player like Wemby because no human being ever has, except for the guards that have played with Wemby. Those are kind of my thoughts here. Is like San Antonio is probably is a pretty substantial upgrade for me. I don't know how many points I'm going to make it, but it's a big one. Joe Dellera, what's your reaction to the trade?
I'm stunned that the Spurs didn't have to move Devin Vassell and that they also didn't have to move Sohan. I think it's an absolute home run that they didn't have to move either of them. So to me, and they didn't move Castle, which I didn't think they were going to have. I didn't think they were either A, going to do, and then B, the money, he wasn't really a huge factor there. The fact that they were able to do this with pick equity and then basically just money in terms of the contracts was incredible, because one of the major concerns with bringing De'Aaron Fox, who doesn't have a ton of range, right, is if you had to move Devin Vassell, now you have this like a little bit of a weird spacing thing. You don't have as great like shooting to surround these two elite like interior threats. Wemby obviously can space the floor himself. I think this is an absolute home run for the Spurs. This is about as good of a scenario I think that they could have had in bringing in a guy who wants to be there, who's still under contract. And then I think this trade is going to make it so that he's not really Supermax eligible. So it's going to make it a little bit more of a palatable contract, probably actually in the range of where Fox should be, right? And then you get to pair him with Wemby. I think this is a fantastic trade for San Antonio. For the Kings, you really just have to wonder, look, like you saw this in Chicago before. They had some success the first year, but that was 3 years ago. So, like, do we want to, are they going to keep this team together? Are you going to move some players around? Are you going to try to maybe flip either, like, does DeRozan now want out? You have to wonder, like, what the situation is in Sacramento, if there's maybe another move to come as well.
Jim, what do you got?
Yeah, so I think I'm a tiny bit lower on the move from the San Antonio perspective than you guys. I like the move, and in part I like the move because I think you kind of have to do something. A lot of times it's really easy, and the first place my brain went, this has been a topic of conversation on NBA Twitter, in our Slack and all that, is kind of the which point guard do we want with Wemby? And Trey has been the name that has been being put up against De'Aaron Fox. And in my mind, I would much rather Trey. He's obviously a much worse defender, but offensively, I like what his fit with Wemby far more than Fox. I have a lot of questions about Fox. I think he is a good clutch player. I think that is going to matter in with the Spurs. I think Wemby is, at the point where you want a little bit of help down the stretch in those clutch moments. But I do have questions about Fox. However, what you get here is a year and a half, and you get 2 postseasons to look at this. And the other thing is, Trae Young just might not have been available. We theoretically can make up all these things about great fits, and even then, not everyone agrees with me on that fit. But it misses the point. Sometimes you just have to do the thing. And Wemby is so good that he was making it so that they had to go ahead and do the thing. They looked at this season and they already said, Wemby is going to make us passable enough that we are not going to get a top 5 pick. So we're going to at least start to, dip our foot in the water. Then they looked like, they got out to about a 500 start to the season. And it was like, okay, I think we need to just go for it. And Fox was sitting right there. He was interested in coming. You're going to get at least 2 postseasons to look at the two of them in combination and see if this is the point guard that you really want with Wemby forever. I have questions about it, but I would love to see it. And I do think that there's a lot to be said. Matt, you said his defense has not reached the ceiling that it is, his full potential there in Sacramento. I think it's very true. I think a player like him who at times the weaknesses is, he will maybe kind of over jump into plays and go for those steals. With Wemby behind you, that's a far less, deleterious attribute, and actually kind of a good attribute, and can really kind of lead to fast break points. So I'm intrigued. I'm definitely intrigued. And I think that like my Fox skepticism is probably canceled out by my Spurs belief. So that I am definitely intrigued by this team right now. I was intrigued by them before the year in terms of, making the playoffs and things like that. If you look at them right now, they're 4 games back of the 6th seed in the loss column. There is a lot of basketball to be played right now. This doesn't strike me as a fit that's going to take a whole lot of time to come together. Sometimes we talk about like a Luka and LeBron. That might take a little bit of time. It's 2 ball dominant guys. Wemby's a ball dominant guy, but he's going to fit very smoothly next to Fox on offense. And the defense is going to immediately, jump up, in part because they're just going to have another strong defender, where we see the numbers with Wemby on the court versus off the court. This is now another player that can keep on the court for when Wemby is off and kind of float that defense a little bit. I do wonder about Defensive Player of the Year. We were kind of counting on, their team defense being down around 15 and that being the case against. I wonder if this moves up a couple and it kind of cinches the Wemby DPOI. So overall, I am very intrigued by the trade. I'm really curious to see what they can do the rest of the season. I don't know if there's a great way to bet it, because I still am not going to bet the Spurs to come out of the West. It's going to be Wemby's first playoffs. I do have questions about Fox in general, so I don't think that's the way to play it. But I'm in. I'm really intrigued in seeing this. Sacramento, I just spent 5 minutes rambling about Spurs. Sacramento, I can keep my thoughts to like 2 seconds and don't care. like really don't need to chat about them at all. And then obviously the Chicago part doesn't matter. So I want to see what happens with San Antonio. I don't have a specific bet other than say I'm glad Wemby has a player that is up to his potential to surround him now.
They're plus 390 to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm gonna bet the 390.
Yeah,
I have an 8 right now.
That seems fun.
I have an 8 right now, and part of this, and we'll have to come back to this during the Lakers segment. The Lakers are projecting very loudly that they're like, we're not going to rush this. We have time. Which, I would be like, oh, so like LeBron's going to leave, but he's already indicated that he's going to stay. LeBron bullied 2 organizations for 10 years and has just let the Lakers walk all over him because the weather's super nice. 390 is the number that I think I am going to bet that for the Spurs to make the playoffs. There's no value there.
Actually, yeah.
I like it a lot.
Hey, real quick, Jim, do you know what percentile Trae Young is in defensive EPM? Just off the top of your head.
Yeah, but that's why you have the Wemby.
No. It's a serious question. Do you know what percentile he is?
You said by defensive player,
defensive
by
EPM.
what metric?
Yeah, defensive EPM.
Oh God.
Yes, the percentile.
Yeah, it's probably 10th percentile.
Oh man, that's a little high. It's 1. He's in the first percentile defensively. First.
That is impressively bad.
99% of the league has a better defensive EPM than Trae Young.
Hey, you know what they say.
That bad
Jim, we're very proud of you for jumping off of Hawks Island this week. I'm very proud of you, but this is like the last step in your addiction recovery is letting go of this idea that Trae Young is if you want to get into it, here's my best argument. Who do you think you can hold accountable better, Trae Young or De'Aaron Fox?
See, I kind of think it's Trae Young. I do. I think Trae in a good organization would step up much more than De'Aaron Fox. I think De'Aaron Fox, he chased off coach. Some of my questions about Fox are like that exact thing. I have some questions about
he chased off
when
what?
Push comes to shove.
What did Fox chase off?
Coaches. Those comments after the Mike Brown firing were really weird.
Didn't Trae kill 3 coaches in 2 years?
Yeah, it could totally be biased. It definitely could. But I have not gotten the feeling, from my perspective, you are much more tapped into the league. I would rather put Trae next to Wemby, both from a personality perspective and an on-court perspective.
I'm going to get you a Hawks hoodie. This is
and Jim, you know what they say: defense wins championships, baby. So
okay, let's talk Rookie of the Year as an impact here, since we're the basketball stuff. We'll have time to deconstruct. Rookie of the Year hasn't really moved as a result of this move. Stefan Castle is still second at plus 260, behind the ridiculousness that is a Khalil Ware plus 150 number. we were having this conversation before the show, and I will say that I am not certain of what happens to Castle here. Like, I don't know if Castle loses minutes. I would imagine Chris goes to the bench, they start Castle, and it's Fox, Castle, Wemby. It's Fox, Castle, Vassell, Keldon off the bench, Sohan, and Wemby. That I would imagine is your starting five.
Yeah.
You know, young, same timeline,
Sure.
athletic, all works pretty well together. But I will say, like, it will be harder for Castle to get opportunities. Like, Fox isn't going to make life easier for Stephen Castle because Castle's not enough of a shooter. So there is kind of like, I think, a cost here, Joe, of what's going to happen to Stephen Castle, which, like, I've bet him several times. We have a wide range of possessions. We're going to give out another one here in a little bit. But, like, I don't know that Castle's dead for ROI, but I do think that there's a chance that this doesn't, I can't look at this and be like, oh, this is a great spot to get on Stephen Castle. It is pass or fade at this point.
Yeah, I think it's really tough on Castle right now, especially at the number, given the fact that we're seeing, you know, some other players kind of move up. Like Wells keeps kind of like popping back up. Ware has been there. I think that there might be an opportunity to buy on Castle if things are a little rocky, maybe in the first week of this, where, you know, maybe his numbers dip or he has a couple bad games and we start seeing maybe like a 7-1, an 8-1, 9-1. Maybe that's when you can buy in on Castle as like a little bit of an overreaction. But given that we haven't seen any move in the market yet, I think it's tough. He's going to have difficulty in terms of usage, and especially in the fourth quarter. Like if he's in the closing lineup and your closing lineup has Fox and Wemby, there's like, when you watch the Kings, no one else touched the ball besides Fox and DeRozan. It's going to be the same thing for the Spurs, except maybe even worse, honestly. Those two guys are never going to pass the ball, except maybe to each other, and that's going to be it in the fourth quarter. So I think that's going to probably cut into some of his counting stats as well as the season kind of progresses.
Jim, what are your thoughts here on the award we cannot escape?
Yeah, truly, man. I will lead by saying this. So Ware, the now leader, in the 2 games since we last talked about him and said do not bet him last weekend, he has scored 5 points and 6 points. So we will double down on do not bet Khalil Ware. Alex Sarr is the name that I keep going back to, and we had this discussion last week. I was like, Joe, do the what do they have to average to get to this number? Now you have a name that you threw out before the podcast that I at first was like, and then I was like, you know what? The points per minute are there. The narrative would definitely be there. Do you want it? I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah.
Why don't you take it?
Well, the guy that I was talking about was Matas Buzelis. I think is really interesting.
Oh, no, sorry. I was talking about Matt's guy.
Matt's guy, yeah. I was like, I said him, and then Matt said somebody better. So...
Yeah. Did I say Joe by accident? I meant Matt's guy was the guy I liked.
Yeah, let's wait because we'll come back to
okay.
Why
that's a good tease.
Why I like that gentleman here in a second. We'll talk about some more from the fallout from the Los Angeles Lakers trade of Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic. Every time I say it, it gets weirder here up next on Buckets. First, I want to let you know, if you're listening to this show, you probably like betting as much as I do, okay? And when it comes to betting, there's 2 things that I'm always trying to do. Make it easier and make it more profitable. That's why we've partnered with Edge Boost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager, okay? You're listening and you're like, all right. Edge Boost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit because with the Edge Boost Visa debit card, you get up to 0.5% back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're already doing. It's a no-brainer. Try it out this week. Set up the account. It took 5 minutes to set it up. Less than that. It was like 2 minutes for me to set up the account. And then once I had the account set up, I went to and deposited it into a book. And I was expecting it to be like, well, okay, this is probably going to be complicated and this is going to be hard. Nope. You click a button, it shows you your number. You're able to copy and paste it in. You set it in there, and everything was smooth and it was completely seamless. This isn't some credit card gimmick. Okay. I opened my Edge Boost account. It made it easier to deposit into every book that I use it with. No catch, no hidden fees, no minimum balance requirements, none of that. And if you've ever had a casino transaction flagged by your bank, I've done this where I'm in Vegas and I'm getting freak out alerts from my bank because I'm trying to withdraw cash to go play at the tables. This is never going to happen with Edge Boost. If you've been given the runaround when trying to fund a sportsbook online account, the Edge Boost debit card is the perfect tool. It starts with a $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for gambling activity. And that's why we were so happy to open an account. I loved using it. I was really impressed with the entire process of setting up this account. Make your betting life easier and stop leaving money on the table. That's edgeboost.bet and use the promo code BUCKETS to start at tier 2 for faster bank deposits and more cash back. That's edgeboost.bet to learn more. All right, let's talk about the Lakers and the Mavericks and the fallout from this trade. Nico Harrison, trying to think about how I want to say this. One could say that he donned a clown costume and paraded around in front of everyone honking his nose today. He had a press conference and it did not go well. The reality is, here's what I've heard. I want to kind of fill people in on what I've heard in the last 12 hours in the aftermath. This legitimately was that Nico Harrison runs the Mavericks. Mark Cuban would have never allowed this. This would have never occurred. But the Adelsons and DuPont family have given Nico Harrison full control of the Dallas Mavericks basketball organization. He has free authority to make this trade. He went to them and convinced them, even though he said they laughed at first, he talked them into it and said this is what they needed to do. I personally, if I went to my owner and they laughed at it, would be like, I'm just kidding. Of course I wouldn't do that. When he went to the Lakers, and his good friend, by the way, who he worked with for 20 years, Rob Pelinka, when Nico was with Nike, ... Apparently Pelinka laughed. It was like, yeah, right. Okay. And then he was like, no, seriously, what if? Again, little signs that maybe you should slow down on this road that you're peeling down at 90 miles an hour. But the result of all this is that I have come to the understanding that Nico Harrison genuinely believes that right now and over the next 3 to 4 seasons, Anthony Davis is a better player than Luka Doncic. That is like the core of this. Is that, and look, there's going to be questions about Luka's health, and if there's something else going on, and if Nico Harrison's a double agent. Like, if I was a Mavs fan, I would want like surveillance. Like, I'd be like, is he meeting in back rooms with Lakers personnel? Is Clutch like slipping him? Like, that's how insane this was. But at the core of it really is that Nico Harrison genuinely believes that this is a championship roster, that they're better off without Luka and with Anthony Davis. Like, Nico Harrison has approached the comments after the trade as if they won the trade. This isn't like, it's a tough decision, but we had to face the reality of things. And, sometimes you have to make moves you don't want to. We appreciate everything that Luka's done. He's been so amazing for us, but we had to look out for what's best for the future. They were like, it's genuinely been like, why are you booing me? I'm right. That's the tone that has been taken here. I've pulled up and I've got a sense from looking at the numbers of how the markets have moved over the last day. We'll talk about that. But Jim Turvey, you were not with us last night on the emergency episode as I freaked the fuck out last night. So I'm curious to get your reaction to the trade and what you think about it.
Yeah, very enjoyable listen, by the way. That's a great podcast you guys did. I got it literally as I was wrapping up hosting some board games and crawling into bed. And I said, oh, dear God, they're going to pod. And I can't do it. So I got a little bit of time to decompress. And you know me, I'm like the world's, I would argue, one of the preeminent Luka haters in the world. Trust me, I wanted to somehow have the Zag take and be like, yeah, like I'm here for this trade. Like, yeah, it's not as bad as it. No, it is hands down one of the worst trades of all time. And I think the biggest thing is if I squint, I can see an argument for saying Luka with his, he can be tricky to build around at times. His attitude is genuinely seems like it's a little bit of an issue. The conditioning is definitely an issue. I can squint and kind of see that case, but to do no shopping of him, that's the part. And I know everyone's saying it, but it's just absolute insanity. And I guess you lock in, like, supposedly there was one other offer and you lock in on 80, but like, and you don't want it floating around. I guess I can't conceptualize this. And we can talk about the specifics looking forward, but I think to look backwards, there's no way that you can make the case that this makes the Dallas Mavericks today a better team. There isn't that case to be made, and that's before you account for the fact that Luka is 25 and AD is 32, and not a paradigm of health at 32. So, I mean, it's not groundbreaking, takes coming from me, but I will say that, maybe my bona fides as a Luka hater come into play here and say, even from that perspective, I think it's one of the worst trades of all time.
Always fun when you can be the guy labeled with what's considered to be the worst trade of all time. So kind of like the final basketball related kind of note on this, I'll say, is from a directional standpoint, and this should impact the betting markets. The Lakers are signaling very loudly that they're going to be patient with this. Dan Weinke of the LA Times has kind of hinted at this, that they're going to continue to pursue deals. They'll try and get a center because they currently don't have one, and they'll try and pick up maybe another guard. I think Austin Reeves is now available. That doesn't make any sense. You roll out Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic in a playoff series, and you are mincemeat.
Owns.
And so, like, that is the lamb being lowered into the T-Rex pit in Jurassic Park. So, that I think that those guys they'll be open to making those trades down the line. They will look to reshape this roster over the next 6 months. The Lakers are not approaching this as this was a move for us to win the title this year. Now, that doesn't mean that this won't click together and they'll figure some stuff out. Like, what if they go to the Atlanta Hawks and they offer some sort of not the 2031 pick, but some sort of draft compensation along with Rui Hachimura for Clint Capella, who's expiring, right? Like, you add Clint, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, some shooters, Dorian Finney-Smith. That's a really good team. That team can make noise, right? Because you got Luka Doncic, because you have one of the best players in the world that the Mavs traded for one pick. So, but my impulse here is that the signals are that the Lakers are not like, we traded for Luka, we're gonna make 2 other trades and we're going for it. They're like, we just reshaped the next decade of this franchise. We reshaped everything because Nico Harrison is a good friend, and we will approach it that way. The Mavericks, on the other hand, are not of that mindset. The Mavericks, like, again, nothing about this makes sense. The team that just traded a top 3 NBA player, the consensus favorite to win MVP the last 3 seasons, that team is the one that's like, yes, now we can go for it. And the team that just acquired it is like, let's be patient. Let's not get too hasty. We got lots of time. LeBron's only 40. Like,
I keep thinking about that tweet. Like he's only 40. How long will the fuckery continue?
This fuckery can't continue much longer. So, like, none of this makes sense at all. But that's kind of the perception, which is why I think the division market, I think, is pretty fascinating here. It's settled. And here's where it's at DraftKings. Clippers plus 120. Lakers settled down at plus 135. Suns plus 800. Kings plus 1,300. That is a that is a massive drop off. They were plus 600 at DraftKings a week ago, and now they're 13-1. That's a $7 move there on the Sacramento Kings after trading De'Aaron Fox. Golden State Warriors at 18-1. So, Joe, I think we're kind of in the same place here where we were last night, which is I'm gonna wait to see what else happens this week, because there's still trades to be made. Like, the Phoenix Suns could wind up with Jimmy Butler and jump somebody. But honestly, after this trade, I'm kind of like, even though I think De'Aaron Fox is very good and he is not a first percentile defender, I do think that the Kings here at 13-1, that's probably an overreaction. That's kind of my read on this now, Joe, is like the 2 moves in tandem. I'm kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, the Kings could be okay.
Yeah, I mean, and for what it's worth, they're still 30-1 at FanDuel. So that is, like, that's the other thing. Like, and we talked about this last night. But when there's moves like this and trades like this, I think this is probably the most important time to line shop, because like you have these wild disparities because some books just are reacting in one way or they're taking a position on a certain thing, and you can find a lot of different opportunities here. So I think the fact that they're 30-1, I get that the trade, you lose the Aaron Fox, but they're not that bad, and it's kind of one of those situations where I'm not really sure that the rest of the division is that good. So at 30-1, it definitely feels a little bit long. I know that it's funny because I feel like, what was it, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, when we were burying the Kings, and then that we were like, oh man, we should have bought them then because they made that surge, and then now all of a sudden they're back to being the longest odds in the division. I think that you're right, though, in terms of waiting. Like, at this point, there's only a couple more days. Like, I think you have to wait. I would think that the Lakers, I know that they're not trying to make they don't need to make another big splash. Like, that's not really what they're trying to do. I think they have to get a center, because you're just going to kill LeBron. like LeBron might die if you don't have a center, because he's gonna play the 5, because I feel like that's just the way he is. Like he'd be like, oh, I guess I got it, I'll do it. And I think they have to make a move. I think that Nick Claxton would be super interesting for them. I feel like he's somebody that's probably available given the Nets situation, and I think his contract's not that crazy, so to me, that he would be somebody that I would want if I was the Lakers and I was trying to go after somebody. He probably costs more than Capella, though, and maybe that's what the concern is.
Jackson Hayes, I think, is going to start.
I think Hayes is fine.
Honestly,
I think Hayes and Claxton are closer to each other, in terms of what they do. I think it would be a little bit more seamless to have them both on the roster, as opposed to a Capella and a Hayes.
Well, if Hayes is just catching lobs from either LeBron or Luka all game, he doesn't have to contribute a whole lot on that end.
I want to shout out Brandon Anderson, who made the comment that everyone will discover that Jackson Hayes and Derek Lively are the same level of player. Just the most generational hater ever. Derek Lively is so good.
He is so much better. I love you, Brandon, but that's a bad take.
And this offensive line ranking motherfucker comes in and equates Jackson Hayes with Derek Lively. I'm so offended. All right. So let's talk Rookie of the Year, because this is where we get to the play that Joe was like, modest but zealous, because they're going to tank. The Bulls are going to tank, which they might. My problem is, okay, we have news. The Heat's Jimmy Butler has communicated to the Warriors that he is unwilling to sign an extension there, and therefore trade talk to send him to Golden State have ended for now, via ESPN's Brian.
Does he think this is going to work?
Who's he going to play for?
Bro, this is insane.
You don't want to play for the Warriors? You don't want to play with Curry?
He's doing so much damage to his reputation in the last 3 months.
This is insane. The only team that he wants to go to, Bradley Beal, I was dying at this. There was the video of Durant reacting to the Luka trade. Yeah. And Brad Beal's sitting next to him, and Kevin Durant's like, what the fuck? And Bradley Beal's looking at it, and he's like, damn, could it be me? I got a no trade clause. There's no, he's not going to waive that thing. I don't know. I don't know how this happens.
The Levine deal to me is significant because I don't think he wanted to go to Chicago, but there was a structure where that Chicago was going to help them move the money.
Yeah.
And they might still be able to do it with Vooch, but this makes it harder. This just does. It makes it harder. And if you ask me how this is going to go, somebody's going to do something real stupid for Jimmy Butler. And currently, I'm just as a Grizzlies fan, I'm just please God, please don't do this, please.
I mean,
please,
he semi-ruled him out, right?
And I'm
here's the thing: the Grizzlies. I think that I don't know Zach Kleiman at all. What I will say is that the impression I've been given of Zach Kleiman is that Zach Kleiman is very much the kind of guy that would be like, I don't know, show me, prove to me you won't. Let's go
Yeah.
make a playoff run and see how much you like these guys' energy and how tough we are, and then we'll see.
Man, that's crazy. Did the Warriors also
You just
miss?
send him to the Knicks. Like,
No.
Joe, can your
Oh
team
no.
can your team just go back?
David, can you cut Matt's mic, please?
Like, can you guys just go back to being the team that takes on all the dumb contracts, please?
this
Like,
this
you already traded for Cat. Like, come on.
there's a 0% chance. Well, but Cat's contract it
Who
was specifically bad because he was paid at the Supermax to play the 5 and they moved him to the 4. Now he's getting paid the Supermax to play the position that he was supposed to be otherworldly at, and he's doing that. So it's like the contract's way less bad just by the nature of the fact that he's playing the 5. But like the other question that I have with the Jimmy news, because this Jimmy news is coming out immediately after the Fox trade, did the Warriors, when they basically were involved in the trade, right? Because they were thinking they could maybe get Levine and Vooch. Did they essentially pull out of the trade because they thought that they could get Jimmy Butler, and then Jimmy Butler's approached with the trade and he goes, nope, not going to do it. Because that would be next level too.
I'm just trying to see if I can figure out a construct here to get Jimmy Butler on the Knicks. Let's see here.
Get the old trade machine whirring over there.
Yeah, just like Josh Hart is like the most heat culture guy
Get
ever.
out of here.
There's a literal zero. Like that'd be like trading Bizarro Jimmy Butler for each other. I feel like just the way he stuffs the stat sheet. I just don't see a scenario where they would even want it.
Yeah, I don't think they would want him.
I don't know. What if he agrees to join CAA?
Yeah.
I mean, is Miami just gonna cut him?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. We'll see how that wraps up. All right. The play, though, is this. Here's the top 4 in rookie eligible players in points per 36 minutes. Stephen Castle at 16.9. Zachary Risachet, who we've liked very much, and I think could like a lot more here. Especially given that he plays with a player better than De'Aaron Fox. And then Zach Edey. And then 4th is Dalton Connect at 16.2. So Dalton Connect is a 6'6" small forward. The Lakers have gotten much smaller. And even though it's like, well, yeah, but AD was a power forward and a center. Yeah, but everybody's going to shift down. I think Dalton Connect plays more now. And I think Dalton Connect pairs extremely well with Luka Doncic. You want to put shooters on the floor. He's going to get lots of high-volume shot opportunities. So Joe Dellera, in the market, you can find Dalton Connect, who was hot there for a second early on, and we were like, do not bet this. This is a ridiculous overreaction to 4 games. Now, however, that Dalton Connect is 200-1 at DraftKings, there's pretty good value, I think, on him now.
I love this. I think it's a snipe at 200-1, especially the way that we've been betting Rookie of the Year and we've basically taken positions where we're saying we don't like this guy at this price, we don't like this guy at this price, we don't want a ticket on this player. Like, I think this is probably the right way to construct your position, especially like if you have a little bit of Wells, if you have maybe a little bit of Sarr at a good number, like we have some Edey at like 50-1. This to me is a great little dart that you can throw in there. The points are there already. They probably can go up from here anyway. And he's on the Lakers. So I think that it's at 200-1. The number's outrageous. It's definitely worth a sprinkle.
We've gotten the best numbers on all of these guys. Like, I've got Stephon Castle at 10-1, Zach Edey at 15-1, now Dalton Connect at 200-1, and like it's gonna wind up being like Alex Sarr. It's gonna just be like Alex Sarr at a pretty base number here. Jim, your thoughts?
I love the Connect one. So the big thing I keep saying is like we're halfway through the year, so the person has to have a decent enough base, and that's why the Bezelis is really smart. And like honestly, I'll probably be playing Tailing Joe on all the props. I think you said you hit his points prop today.
Yeah,
I'll be on those, but he's at 5 points a game right now. He'd have to basically average 20 points a game the rest of the season. I don't see that in Matas Bezelis' future. Dalton Connect is over 9 points a game already. to get him to what I've been trying to look at is like that 12, 13 points a game range. And honestly, if he gets a Laker boost, I think he can settle right at 12 points. Narratively, if he's like kind of the guy hitting shots next to Bron and Luka, that's going to only get him in the spotlight. So if he averages like 15 a game the rest of the way, that's a big number for a rookie, but it's not a crazy number. And it's like for a guy who's going to be on the wing next to two generational open shot creators, at 200 to 1, I think this is. I still think Sarr is the most likely. I really don't like where Richache is interesting, but I just really don't love his ceiling, and I want to let that one settle and see what their starting lineup looks like after everything goes down in Atlanta the next week. I don't know if they'll even sell off, and he's even with him starting like 24 minutes a game. Maybe you take a little dart, but that's not long enough. This 200 to 1 on Connect in a guy who I now think will be in that conversation with those guys with a Laker boost. I love this one.
Yeah. And we have the Richache ticket at like the 100 to 1 from a couple weeks ago. So it's like, I think we're in a great position, because if you liked the Richache analysis that we gave when we were saying this is the spot where he could get a little bit of a bump, like et cetera, this is the literal exact same thing, except on a way, way, way more like media exposed team.
Yeah.
And at double the number.
Yeah,
it's great.
Jim, we're running long on time, but I want to roll through the matchup like possibilities here quickly.
Yeah, so let me do like a super quick. So what I thought would be fun is to kind of look at the potential matchups for the Lakers to draw, because I do think the Lakers are the much more interesting team to kind of think about from a futures perspective. So looked at the rest of the teams in the West. I kind of went, good matchup, bad matchup. So I think good matchups for the Lakers is Memphis. I think that it's not a dream matchup. I think that they can kind of throw off the pace that Memphis wants. And I think those generational whistles that Luka and LeBron are going to get could get Triple J off the court pretty quick. What are your 2-second thoughts on Memphis as good or bad?
I actually love this. I love this move in terms of the Grizzlies' chances of beating them. They can't match up with Anthony Davis. Like the Mavericks now have an even better chance of beating the Memphis Grizzlies because they can't do anything with AD. Jaren can't do anything with him. Luka has been a problem for them as well, though. Like you're right that they've had issues with both. Luka has owned Memphis when they played, but the problem I think is just like, are the Lakers going to be able to get stops here? Like, how's their transition defense going to be? Because the Grizzlies are just going to get downhill and they're going to run Luka and LeBron. Like, this is the thing is like, even though Nico Harrison's insane about Luka's conditioning, but like Luka's not in great shape and coming off a calf injury and hasn't played a lot this year, and LeBron's 40. Like this team is neither, and then a lot of the other guys are like young or out of position, so like they're just gonna have a really like if you can get downhill on them, I think that's really dangerous. So I actually kind of lean towards Memphis in that matchup, and I lean a lot towards Dallas in the Dallas-Memphis matchup.
Okay. Then I've got Clippers and Wolves. I'll put them together. I think these are decent matchups because these are like gritty defensive teams. I think come postseason, that Luka and LeBron are two of the guys you would want to go against gritty defenses, getting ugly buckets against those good defenses. And Minnesota, I mean, Luka versus Gobert. I'm not ever going to be on the Gobert side of that matchup.
The Clippers have to deal with Luka Doncic four times a year now.
Yeah.
That poor franchise.
It's amazing.
So I do think that this is bad for the Clippers, just because the Clippers question is going to be, even with Kawhi and how good he is and if he's available, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you could have banked on in a Clippers series, because the Clippers have had a lot of success versus the Lakers over the years. You could have banked on, hey, Kawhi's the best player in this matchup. Before it was like, hey, Kawhi's the best player on the floor. You can no longer say that. Luke is better than Kawhi because of where Kawhi's at physically. So I think that changes the dynamic, and the Lakers are going to be able to be like, we're just going to outscore you. Yeah. Like we're just going to run up and down and outscore you. I don't know what the defense is going to look like. That's part of the thing is like, until the Lakers get a center, figuring this out is going to be very difficult, because it's like if they get a good rim, if they get Claxton so they can switch all, or if they get Capella and play drop, they can go in one of those two directions and JJ will figure it out. But for right now, it's like it's Jackson Hayes, so I don't know. Wolves, it's the same problem they had in the playoffs. They don't have anybody for Luka. They got nobody. They got nobody for that matchup. And so that's going to be tough again, even though I think like Anthony Davis is a really tough matchup too for Rudy. Luka has gone up against Rudy a billion times, and he just destroys him because you're able to get him on an island eventually, and you're able to find ways to attack him. So I definitely lean towards Lakers, I think, in the Wolves matchup.
Dallas, I have a very much would be just, could Luka average 70 a game in a series? Sacramento and San Antonio. Actually, San Antonio, I wrote this before the Fox and Wemby, but I don't think they're in the tier that we even need to super worry about right now. Bad matchups on the flip side. I have Houston as actually, I think, kind of a sneaky bad matchup. We keep talking about wanting to fade Houston, but if you can throw Amen Thompson on one of Luka and LeBron, Tari Eason on the other, and then put Alper and Şengün with, at this second, not a great post presence for the Lakers. At this moment, I actually think Houston would be one of the worst matchups for the Lakers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good matchup for them. They've got speed, they've got the ability to go downhill, they've got better depth, right? So like the Lakers now have a thin team, and they don't have the ability to concoct as many lineups. Like Luka's not a hyper versatile player; he's just a point forward. So you have 2 point forwards, and then you can do like 2 point forwards, 2 shooters, and a big.
Yep.
You have very limited kind of constructs you can build with this Lakers roster. Again, they'll reshape this thing over the next 6 months and be great. Like they got Luka Doncic, but for the immediate, I would agree. Houston's a bad matchup.
I think Denver is a bad matchup, but that's again very much this second. They're not going to have an answer for Jokic, but I do think they'll address it. But they've also struggled with Denver the past few years. I wanted to ask you how much of that was the AD part of it, though, and with him out the door, and now it being more centrally, like Luka and LeBron versus Jokic, that matchup changes a lot. But I still think I would, on the list of good versus bad, I came down on Denver being not a great matchup for the Lakers.
I think the key is going to be if the Lakers run up against tough teams that can score, they're in trouble. The Nuggets are not a tough team, but the Nuggets are also just going to be like, would you like to have a shootout?
Yeah.
We are very comfortable with that. Yeah. And like Jokic is going to average 40, 20, 10. And that's just what's going to kind of happen unless, again, we'll see what they do with the rest of it.
Then I found 2 teams just way too hard to read, Phoenix and Golden State. I'll circle back to them in a second. But here was my biggest takeaway. I saw a tweet saying that the Thunder were losers of this trade. I could not disagree more. Because to me, Dallas, even all of my questions about them, I thought they provided one of the most difficult matchups for the Thunder because they had the defensive scheme and personnel to be able to bother the Thunder. We saw it in the postseason last year and even in the regular season this year. And then they had the Luka offense to it. This Lakers team is not going to have that defense that gives the Thunder any sort of trouble now. And they do have the Luka offense, but if you're going to get into a shootout with the Thunder, I do not see that ending well. I really think that the Thunder, I was looking, their odds basically haven't moved. I think this net helps them in taking out what I think was actually one of the worst matchups for them in Dallas, replacing them with a Lakers team that I think the Thunder match up decently with, and certainly better than that Dallas team.
I was the one that tweeted it. So
I saw it from some random person out there.
So here's my argument. The Luka thing is a long-term thing. Like, think about this. Presti has been so careful and so patient and has built this for years and accumulated draft capital and added more trades and done the hard work and slow built and developed guys and hired Chip Engelland to help them to shoot and was very careful and added Caruso without giving up a pick and used the cap space on Isaiah Hartenstein. And they're smart and they're thorough and they're so good at what they do in approaching everything, and the Lakers just get a phone call that's like, hey, do you want Luka Doncic?
It really is the stepping on the rake and the championship hitting them in the face meme that's going around.
It's insane.
So long term, it's just like, the Thunder can do all this, but like, I mean, look, I'm just gonna be real with you. They still have the 2031 pick. Do you know why? Because everybody's wondering what happens with Giannis this summer. Don't rule it out. Like, and this is like the bane of Sam Presti's existence, is he can do everything right and still lose because his team's in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, you're right that the Lakers are no longer a threat to them. Like, the Lakers can't beat the Thunder in a 7-game series. I think the Dallas matchup is worse. They had trouble with AD, and it's like, the Thunder fans swear up and down to be different with Isaiah and Chet. Guys, neither one of those guys is going to be able to match up with AD. I'm the biggest AD critic you are going to find in the world. The world. I know every detail. And I'm not casual with it. I can talk to you about you think he's this great perimeter defender? Watch what happens when you get him in a hedge situation coming off of a left or right pick and roll from the side or left side to middle. Watch how often the guy gets a corner on him and gets the edge and is all of a sudden downhill versus no weak side defense. Watch what happens when you try and put him up against an actual post threat and how often he gets bumped off because he doesn't have the interior, like the low post, the actual low body center of gravity to be able to withstand that. Watch how often he falls down shooting a jump shot, trying to draw a foul, and then his team gets ran on the other way versus him doing what he needs to and getting back because he's so athletic. I know all this stuff. He's still going to absolutely, like, he's going to kill Chet Holmgren. He's going to kill Isaiah Hartenstein. He's going to kill them. You know why? Because he's going to be able to hit the floater. He's just going to turn and hit little float shots, and he can hit those. He can't hit a jump shot outside 10 feet to save his soul, but he can hit those. And they have they still have the best rim protection. It's going to come down to, can Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, and Isaiah Joe hit open threes? That's what it's going to come down to. And we have no proof of that. That's a worse matchup now for them as Dallas.
That's really interesting. I had not framed it that. I was strictly looking at the Lakers side of it, but that is a really interesting point.
Look, Nico Harrison's not like wrong that they still have, like, the difference is like, do the Mavericks still have a chance of making a run to the finals? Yes. Do they have a better chance of making a run to the finals? No. Does that mean that you should have traded Luka Doncic for AD and one first round pick? Of course not.
Yeah,
so I'm getting riled up again. All right. Let's do best bets for Monday and get out of here. Thanks for listening to all this stuff. Hope you guys found it interesting. Hit us with questions. We'll talk more about this stuff on Buckets throughout the week. Let's go around the horn. We'll talk about our best bets. Joe Dellera, what do you got for the Monday slate?
I like Malik Monk over 6.5 assists against the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay, Joe Dellera.
I have the Magic game under. I'm just triple checking live these numbers. 214.5, and then I'm going to take Jokic assists. Jokic to get 10 plus assists. There's no prop out yet, but
I like
his over on assists.
Okay. I'm going to go with Rockets and Knicks over 222.5, and that's going to be my best bet. Joe Dellera, talk to me about Malik Monk now that De'Aaron Fox is gone, and Zach LaVine will not be cleared to play by tomorrow. They won't have done the trade quick enough. He'll have to do physical and get settled in. So why do you like Malik Monk in the spot for assists?
Yeah, so I mean, this has been a good bet, honestly, regardless of whether Fox has played or not. He's at 7.9 assists per game over his last 10. He's had 7 plus in 9 of 10, and even looking back at his last 20 games, he's had at least 6 in basically, 15 of his last 16 games. So he is diming a lot right now. And he's basically going to be the primary ball handler for the Sacramento Kings, especially in this game. And I think that he's going to really try to show that he can do that and like have that role a little bit here. With De'Aaron Fox, he's averaging 7.5 assists per 100 possessions or so. Without De'Aaron Fox, it jumps to over 11. So that's about like a 40-ish%, like 35-40% increase there for Malik Monk. I love the spot here. I know that it's not an ideal matchup against Minnesota, but at the same time, I don't think it really matters. I think that he is just going to be the primary facilitator. He's shown that he can do this against a variety of different teams. And in his last game against Minnesota, he had 9 assists on 16 potentials. So do really like the spot for Malik Monk, and I'm going to go with over 6.5 assists. It's about minus 120 in the market right now.
That was a really great cap. That was just a really great cap, Joe Dellera. You're very good at this.
Appreciate it. Hopefully it hits.
I'm in on this. I'm going to tail you. No, you know what? I'm going to save you. I'm not going to tail you so that you can get a win.
A hero. The hero we need.
Hero. Not the one you deserve, but the one you need. Jim Turvey, why do you like the under in the Magic game?
Yeah, the Orlando Magic have been a kind of a printing machine on these unders. I've got a little quiz for you guys. Guess how many? So their team total tomorrow is 106.5. Guess how many times they have reached 107 points in regulation since Christmas?
Christmas.
Oh, it's like none. Christmas. I remember because we've talked about this.
I'll say twice. One. Okay,
it's one. Is one time. Now that is a little bit misleading. They haven't had Franz and Paolo that whole time, and the one game that went to overtime, they did barely clear it in regulation anyway. So it's a little bit of cherry picking. However, the offensive struggles of this team have been incredible. It has been really rough. This is a Warriors defense that is a top 10 defense. Now, right now, Draymond is questionable. So I'm looking at the game as a whole. Draymond is going to be a big swing factor on whether I want to target the Magic team total specifically at 106.5. Draymond helps the Warriors offense a lot. they're a very short-handed offense this season. He also helps the defense. He has just been a very net positive player this season. If Draymond plays, I'll be looking at the team total specifically for the Magic. If he's out, I do like the under for this game as a whole. The Warriors offense has been pretty dicey as they've been dealing with injuries, and the team totals, the full game totals for both teams. Orlando is 30 and 20 to the under this season. Golden State has more unders than overs as well. So this Magic team, things just aren't clicking right now offensively. I think, long term, there's decent, value to be had there in the offense. However, right now, it really is not working. A solid top 10 Warriors defense with a Thunder offense that just really isn't going right now has me on the game under as a whole, and potentially the team total under as well if Draymond does not play.
Okay. I like this. I have this projected over, but I'm going to ignore it because the Magic can't score anything, right? Like, I had like hopes that the Magic would be like a disruptive force in the playoffs, and I've basically been like, nope, better luck next year, unless they pull off something radical here in the next 5 days. Which, hey, lots of time for more insane things to happen. Yeah, it's honestly a little baffling how bad they are offensively. It's a little confusing. I kind of want to bet the Magic on the spread here just because you're getting like a low value, but it's trying to catch a falling knife. So I'm going to stay away from it and leave that alone. I have a lean towards the over on trends with Grizzlies and Spurs. So Grizzlies and Spurs are the Grizzlies in particular. When the Grizzlies are favored, they're one of these teams that, so Synergy Sports has this category called miscellaneous, which is like you can't classify the possession. It's a broken play, like random pickups, random like broken plays, right? Essentially like weird sequences. And if you can't classify it into a play set as transition, half-court offense, or any of these other things, it falls in this category. Memphis scores an outrageous amount in miscellaneous possessions. So it's one of the reasons that was like what I found when I was trying to figure out what was I missing with why my numbers kept popping up unders for Grizzlies games, even though they're like over every night. It's these random possessions, and so when they're favored, actually, the rates on the over is very, very good. So but I also make this an under spot, and I've had a really hard time figuring out San Antonio, and I don't know where they're going to be at tomorrow. Like, they didn't lose anybody important, but I also just don't know where they're going to be. Grizzlies on the back-to-back. I do, however, like Rockets Knicks. So Rockets on the road, the over is 63%. Knicks at home is 54%. This is a classic kind of matchup of when you're going against a team like this and you get amped for it, you play a little bit faster. And the Knicks know that the Rockets have a very good defense. They're going to play faster in order to try and break that down. I don't like Alperen Şengün trying to guard Cat in space. He's going to do that pick and pop, and Şengün's not good in those sequences. Şengün wants to switch and can actually be okay, or if he blitzes a little bit. So I would probably look for Jalen Brunson unders, even with an over here, because I think they're probably going to blitz him a little bit in those pick and roll situations, but Cat's going to go to town. Meanwhile, I think the Rockets are going to be able to get downhill. Knicks transition defense, not great. Joe, what's the latest on OG?
I think there was supposed to be an injury report that came out. I'll check right now, but I didn't hear anything. Granted, my timeline has been absolutely inundated with literally like anything else. So let me check right now.
I got it right here.
I know they had to submit something by 5.
He is questionable.
He's questionable. Yeah.
I know they said it was a foot, which was weird. Yeah. I was like, oh, that was not what I thought it was. So
that might help this case as well. So I'll go ahead and take that over. I'll take Rockets Knicks on the over here as my best bet. Jim Turvey likes the under in Magic Warriors. Joe Dellera likes the over on the Lake Monk assists. Jim Turvey likes Trae Young over De'Aaron Fox. I like anyone over Nico Harrison. Joe Dellera likes the Knicks. That's your future Jays for Monday. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. My thanks to David Payne, especially thanks to David for jumping on Saturday night for our emergency episode, which you can check out. Having a producer that's willing, I want to make this call out. David's been with us for years now, and he is indispensable to me. He keeps me on track. He makes sure I don't miss ads. I'm not a detail-oriented person. My mind's all over the place. So having David do the work that he does to keep me on track is absolutely valuable, and he's a huge reason why this show succeeds. Also, having a producer that's willing to jump on at Saturday night at 12 o'clock Eastern and do this emergency breakdown to make sure that we get that kind of content up, like, that's the kind of stuff that as a content provider, like, I want to work harder for David because David's so great. So shout out David Payne, our producer. Hope you guys have a great week.
Extremely nice human being.
Yeah, he's also a really good dude.
Goated.
Unlike his boss. So we have 5 days to the trade deadline. If there's other things that are insane that happen, we will do more emergency episodes. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, get buckets.